We are Rogue Media Sports.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the Doomsday Podcast, day 3 of our trip out to Oxnard, California. Ed Werder alongside Matt Mosley, and we've had a wonderful time and a lot of interviews. Already have something in store for you tomorrow that we're very excited about. But today, we talked to a member of the Cowboys Ring of Honor. He's also a longtime colleague of Ed Werder's at ESPN. It is our great friend, Darren Woodson. And Ed, I know of all the interviews we've done, we've had some ones that really seem to connect. This one stands out.
Yeah, I mean, I think tomorrow's is just as going to be as good. I'd have a hard time deciding which one is better. And I don't say that to be like I'm bragging, but the fact is, Darren Woodson, the thing that always struck me about him, and I've covered him since he was a rookie in 1992, he had a rare sense of honesty in the locker room with the media. There weren't very many guys who were truthful in their descriptions and the way they answered questions. I would say it was him, it was Troy Aikman, it was Michael Irvin. Those were the go-to guys when you really wanted to know the truth about what was going on with this football team. And he did not disappoint. In fact, he exceeded my expectations when we discussed the Jerry-Jimmy breakup. He happened to be there in Canton this weekend when Jerry went into the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame. And, Jimmy was there as a presenter for Jason Taylor. Jimmy has not yet been put in the Ring of Honor, which is something that Jerry is in exclusive control of and something that I think we both agree needs to happen. But I thought Woody was remarkably candid, and not surprisingly so, on a variety of topics, and you can name them off if you want.
No, what I'm going to do now is let everybody hear this, and these quotes will be heard around the country, but as our loyal listeners and subscribers, we want to get them to you first. Here is our interview with Ring of Honor member, the Cowboys,
all-time leading tackler,
Darren Woodson. And so pleased, talked to earlier today to running backs coach Gary Brown, and Gary did a good job talking about Zeke, his situation, but certainly as much as we like Gary, he's not a name of the magnitude of Darren Woodson. Ring of Honor member, Darren Woodson, and I hope he can join Jerry someday in the Hall of Fame. Safeties, for whatever reason, seem to have a tough time getting through, even though it becomes a more and more
he didn't know that until I just told him.
Position. Yeah,
you figured that out.
I told him.
Okay. And I know all these things. I know my history.
Are we going to get to the interview at some point?
Woody, the other night, watching the owner that you're so familiar with going in, what were your emotions?
Well, my emotions were, of course, heartfelt because I've known Jerry since 1992. I came in as a second-round pick and been around not only Jerry, but, Charlotte, Steven, Jr., moms, who I still call her moms. The family is more than just football for me. It's they've been a part of my family. They've been a part of the community. Charlotte has helped me out in so many ways off the field as far as community service things. And, I just felt like it was a culmination of, what he's meant to me as a man, what his family has meant to me. And, And the winning the championships and the ups and downs that we've gone through over 20-some years, man, it was it's heartfelt because most of that time, that the things that he was talking about, I was a part of that life of his.
How did you feel watching Jimmy also be there, and what he must have been thinking, given the way that they clashed over credit and who deserved what, for him to sit there and induct another player but see Jerry go in ahead of him?
I don't know how Jimmy felt about that. Honestly, about how he felt that, how he was feeling about, how Jerry going in before him or whatnot. I think time heals a lot. You can tell by not only this time, me seeing them interact with each other at the Hall of Fame, but, we had an event about 3 or 4 months ago. I think, Ed, you were probably there.
February anniversary that Troy put together.
And those two were alone and had great conversations.
Seemed
no
like that
cameras.
was kind of the genesis of them getting back on good terms.
Exactly. No cameras around. It was just, all of us, all the guys in the 90s having a good time, and those two were off on their own like they were back in college talking. And, I think time has healed some of the things. But at the same time, I think both of them understand one thing. They didn't live in the moment back then. Because if they lived in the moment, we probably have 4 or 5 rings instead of the 2 that we had with Jimmy. I think it's their pride got in the way. Both of them realize that. Would they go back and change things? Probably not. Their pride would probably still be big in those situations. But I just think that those two, time has healed a lot of those wounds. And Jimmy's a different guy. I mean, you see Jimmy now, and from what he was in 92 and 93, or back from 89 all the way. I mean, he was intense. Felt like this was his team. And for the right reasons, Jerry felt like, hey, I pay you. And I pay all the rest of these coaches at the same time. So it's my team. So I can understand there being some issues. But, again, I should probably have 4 or 5 rings on my fingers if those 2 would have just gotten along.
Do you think it helped further the healing process between the 2, given what Jerry said on the stage on Saturday night, acknowledging Jimmy?
Listen, and I'm sure that they've had conversations before in the past. And try to get over that situation. But I thought it meant a lot for what Jerry said. Hey, listen, we can take whatever we want from Jerry Jones and his history and all the, good and bad of what he's brought. But the one thing that you will get out of him, you'll get some honesty. He's going to tell you, what's on his heart. And I think that's been weighing on his heart for a lot of years. And there's been a lot of repercussions that came out of that. I was a guy that in 93, we had just won the Super Bowl. I was in Phoenix. And when I found out Jimmy got fired, man, I was as pissed off as anyone. I mean, Michael Irvin, we saw what he did. Throwing garbage cans in the locker room. I mean, people were pissed because we knew we could have made history back then. And, those 2 blew it. Flat out. Plain and simple. They blew it.
You're still not over it?
No, man, because I should have 4 or 5 rings. I mean, honestly, I honestly felt like we were that dominant as a football team. And there was only another team, which was the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC, that could really deal with us. And we had beaten them, 2 straight years. And I know they loaded up that third one year, but I think if Jimmy would have been there, would have whooped them again, in those couple years. And we saw Green Bay was the next team that stepped up. But, we owned Green Bay in those years. And, when you had a good thing, man, it's hard to see it go.
How much did the media back then, having someone like Ed Werder on the beat, how much tension did that cause?
Oh man, it was he was the reason why they split. That was
he did grab me by the pants leg on the way out and say, "Hey, don't leave now. You'll miss the story of the year." I said, "What's the story of the year?" He said, "I'm going to fire that blankety Jimmy Johnson."
Wow, he gave me that story, huh?
He insisted I have it.
Oh wow, well see, there you go. We're going to fight after this, Ed. You and I are going to get into it. Hey, look, I think, I've known Ed forever, and people are, you're doing your job when people are pissed off at you half the time because you're writing the truth.
Yeah.
And Ed is always, to me, he knows this. We've been, I've seen him write things, and they were, to me, if they're truthful, why would I get upset about them?
Yeah.
You take it for what it is. He had a job to do, and he's done his job. And we were friends back in the 90s, and we're still friends today. Yeah. So nothing's changed.
Ed probably told the truth too much with ESPN.
Yeah, he probably did.
And,
absolutely.
We've obviously seen what happened with that. Now, Woody, watching knowing your
team. You're going to talk about this team now instead of the 90s team or this team?
Well, but I want to, yeah, if you'll let me ask the damn question, we'll get it out here.
You ever point the microphone in anybody else's direction?
Yours is not helping us at all. I promise. I don't want you as backup. Okay. And it was like throwing me off that y'all are like sharing the mic and like it was just weird. No, just put it down, Ed. I'm fine. We do not need you. I'll put it in your up near your mouth when we need to. But the 90s Cowboys, y'all did have some characters, and you did have some off-the-field kind of things. Mm-hmm. In some ways, maybe some of those things, you almost sort of rallied around some of those issues. But now, you see what happens with this team now. It's a little different situation. Zeke, who knows what they're going to do.
Right.
There's suspensions.
6 guys could start the season suspended.
Yeah.
We
easily.
We're still counting Randy Gregory. I feel like he's just suspended forever.
Right.
But I mean, is there any? Does that make you think back on some of those guys you played with and some of those times, knowing that y'all had a lot of other stuff you were dealing with, even while you were having success on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not an excuse. I mean, honestly, this is not an excuse, and I don't want people to think this is an excuse. But if we would have had social media, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, in the 90s. Half our team would have been suspended, not for PEDs and not for any kind of drug enhancement, just for what we did off the field. So I want to throw that out there.
Which half? The half that didn't play?
That half. But, I look at these guys now, and it's, the guy right now that there's been about 5 or 6 guys you say about, they're dealing with these suspensions. But Zeke is a guy right now who's probably the biggest player right now, and you just want him to get it right. I know he's 21. There's still no excuse for what he's done off the field. He still has to act right. I thought Sean Lee did a great job, and I just read the story on the way up here about Sean coming out saying, listen, not only do we have to be professional on the field, but we got to be pros off the field. And we need to endear each other to that and make sure that, we handle it the right way. And that's exactly what this team needed to hear. And I think they needed to hear it not only from Sean, they need to hear that from the ownership. They need to hear it from the head coach. And, that's what, Witten and everyone else, they need to start speaking that, man. They need to start talking about that because, they're careless. And they've been really careless in the last few years about, whether it be PEDs or off the field issues. They got to handle. That's a problem here at this organization. They need to deal with it.
I mean, if you're going to use that stuff, it's got to be the right time of the off season, correct?
Why not? Why use? I mean, look, your window of opportunity is, and what's the career? 3 years. And look, I'm just going to speak to it. You got, 3 years is usually your window of opportunity. After that, that's gravy. But I played 13 years. 13 years is a snap, man. It's short. It's short-lived, man. So why even use? Look, I mean, forget everything else. Just don't do it. In your 13 years, after you're done playing, smoke all you want, do whatever you want to do. It's your life, whatever. But maximize the opportunities you have. And speaking to directly to Zeke, and it's not anything but PEDs or whatnot, but it's off the field issues. He probably has 2 contracts. He's playing a running back position. We've seen Adrian Peterson in the last 2 years, and one of the greatest to ever play. He can't get a deal now. He's in his early 30s. I mean, this game is not long at the running back position, so he better get everything right off the field so he can maximize his contracts.
Can you play any role in that as a former player and a good role?
Look, I think everyone has talked.
Former wrongdoer?
I think former wrongdoer, of course. I think everyone has talked to him. I mean, my little 2 cents probably not going to mean much, but, I'm sure Jerry's had this conversation with him, Steven and everyone else. I mean, at some point, it's got to fall on his shoulders to make an impact and do the right thing.
Does the head coach have to handle it differently?
Absolutely.
I mean, you played with Parcells and Jimmy, real taskmasters, guys who demanded accountability. Even superstar players, not quite as much as the other guys.
Yeah, I think so. I think they have to play a huge role in knowing the player. I think Jerry needs to play a bigger role. I know. Jason Garrett needs to play a even much bigger role. The position coach needs to play a huge role. Jason Witten, everyone. I mean, you have when you have a guy like Zeke and at 21, 22 years old. That's had the problems that he's had, at some point someone has to make an impact. And if that person can't make an impact, if all the 20 people can't make an impact, then it may be time to cut your losses and move a different direction because the whole process is about being available. If you're not available, you hurt the team.
How do these guys not realize when they're making this decision or not making it just for themselves, they're making it for 53 52 other players and coaches and owners. And
it's the moment, man. I always believe this. I mean, there's times when, we all go out. I used to go out when I was 21, 22 years old. I was out all the time as well. But, there's a time where you have to act the part. I mean, seriously, you have to act the part. I'm not saying be a role model to everyone, but act the part of just being a professional, knowing at 1 o'clock in the morning that there's nothing good going on at 1. Maybe it's time to shut it down at 11. Maybe you should just go out to dinner that night instead of, putting yourself in those situations. But when you're out, the amount of times that a lot of these guys that go out, I mean, if it's a every Thursday, Friday deal, at some point it's going to catch up to you.
And then you get these.
And then you get the phones and you got the social media. It's just so much that's out there nowadays that, that you can get yourself in trouble with. You just got to shut it down.
I think it helped you that you went to Arizona State.
I got it out of me.
One of the top party
Yes. colleges
in the country.
Absolutely.
And then you get here and it's like, well, this is kind of a letdown.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
Dallas
this is
fun, but it's certainly not, out there on that A mountain or whatever it was. That I scaled, by the way.
I got a lot out of being at Arizona State, a lot of fun. But, at the same time, man, look, I think I just understood that there's a limit. And I'm not the only guy. I remember Jason Witten coming here at 20 years old and being a true professional at 21. So the age deal is not an excuse. Just, handle yourself right, man. Know that this is short-lived and get your money. Make a business out of it and try to win some championships. But you got to be available to win championships.
What's your biggest concern about this defense, given the number of starting players they lost in the secondary, including both corners, starting safety? Are they asking a lot of young corners to come in and play right away without a proven pass rusher?
Absolutely. I think they work hand in hand. Secondary and the pass rusher work hand in hand. And not only that, I think one of their biggest losses, and I didn't know they lost Mo and Brandon Carr on the outside, but one of their biggest losses was Barry Church as far as leadership. Getting guys in the right position, doing the right thing, not only on the field but off the field. The preparation that Church used to put in. I mean, they're going to miss that leadership. And he's a better playmaker than Heath. Let's just call it what it is. Right now, I think that there's a lot of question marks. I know in talking to the coaching staff and talking to the people that have been out here at camp, they like their young players. Orlando Scandrick loves the young guys and understands that they're going to make mistakes early on, but he says they're hungry. They'll make plays on the ball. They'll come up and tackle. They'll do the little things. And he says by the end of the season, they'll probably be a much better secondary than what they were last year.
A buddy of mine who coached you, Mike McIntyre, back in the day, is the head coach at Colorado.
Love Mac.
Isn't it funny? We knew him back then. He was like even an assistant secondary coach.
Assistant to the assistant.
Yeah. And who knew he would be the coach of the year?
Yeah.
He was the NCAA coach of the year. And we had him on this podcast, in fact, and they drafted in the second round Chido Awuzie, I believe is what we like to call him. And Mike said some things about you in the podcast where he basically said this guy, of all the players he's coached, reminds him the most of you in a lot of things he does. First of all, that's you're in the Ring of Honor, so that's a pretty big thing to say. What have you been able to determine, if anything, about him, or what have you kind of heard about him?
He's a true pro. He, in talking to everyone, and I finally just met him just the other day at the Hall of Fame. You see that, he's a professional. He handles himself the right way, and Mac's done a good job with him because, he acts the part and plays the part. I think the one thing I like about him, and just watching him, just this past week, he gave up a couple big plays, but he never quit on the plays, and he was in great position at times, just didn't make the play, but he finished the play. I mean, you see a lot of corners in this league. They'll miss a tackle or miss a play on a ball or whatnot. They'll let it go and let the safety make a tackle on it. This kid gave up a couple plays and he tracked the receiver down and made the tackles on him. And that's part of it. You're going to get beat in this league. They all do. Everyone does. But, a guy that can actually finish the plays and say, all right, I got beat on this one, I'll make this tackle, and I'll get lined up again for the next one. That's what you want to see, and that's what Awuzie has. I think Chido has that type of mentality.
What was your rookie season like? Because you weren't a starter from the beginning of the year. It evolved into that. Can you talk about that and your feelings and
my feelings were hurt my rookie year, Ed. Thanks for bringing it up. Well, because I'm seriously, my feelings got hurt.
Super Bowl ring,
but I wanted to start, man. Honestly, I came in from Arizona State. I was what we called a tweener. So
kind of a
rover back, and the Cowboys didn't know how to utilize me. They didn't know if I was going to play linebacker or safety or whatnot. I got here to line me up as safety. I'd never played the position, but I think one thing they saw was my athleticism. They asked me to cover the slot receiver. They asked me to cover tight ends, and they knew I could cover. So Jimmy had it in his heart, in his mind that, all right, we know you can do these things, but that's all you're going to do this first year. You're going to do that, cover the slot and cover the tight ends, and you're going to run down on special teams.
No small responsibility.
No, but, as a guy that's played since he was 7 years old, I've always, on every team I've ever been, I've been in sort of that alpha mentality that I was a starter. And that was my mindset. And I walked out on the field my rookie year, and I promise you, we came into training camp, not here, which it was, but we were in Austin, and it was hot, and we all had pads on, and we were moving around. And I had the thought at minicamp that I can play in this league. And then we got to training camp, we had all the pads on. I said, I'm better than all these guys. I should be playing. And that's what stuck in my heart the entire season. I had this chip on my shoulder that I should be a player right now. I should be starting right now. And, Jimmy saw it differently. He told me to play your role, and your time's going to come. And it's crazy. We won the Super Bowl 2 days later. Jimmy gets up there and he says, now, Woodson's my starter next year. And I just burned my ass because
he was a little late.
You could have did this week 1 of this past year. Yeah.
But didn't you say something actually?
Yeah, I did, Jimmy, man. Jimmy called me out.
You don't want to tell that story. You don't have to.
No, man, I don't want to call it out.
It was a great story.
Yeah. I don't. Look, Jimmy basically called me out during the season because I was whining about not getting more playing time, and he basically, we had a conversation during practice. And during that practice, he says, you need to stop complaining, just play your role, do your thing, and you'll be okay. And I'm shaking my head like, yeah, whatever. But, I want to start. And he's like, yeah, your time will come. Just, chill out. You think you're better than everybody out there? And I said, yes.
Finally, you get it.
Yes, I think I'm better than all these guys. And then practice was done, and we walk in, and we always watch the film as a defensive back group. We'd watch the film after practice, and we're sitting there in the room watching practice. Dave Campo has the clicker, and we're going over what we did at practice, and the lights are on, and all of a sudden, door opens up, lights come on, and Jimmy says, "Hey, Woodson." And I look back, and he says, "You still think you're the best safety on the team?" In front of everybody. And I thought, damn. Appreciate you, but yes. I didn't say it that strong, but I was like, I shook my head like, yeah, I do. But he just put me on the spot.
Right.
And that was Jimmy, man.
That's coaching, though, right? He's making you live up to it in front of everybody.
Oh, my God. I mean, I was like, they hate me now. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So James Washington didn't love that
comment? I'm sure he or Everett or Kenny Gant. I don't think anyone loved that comment.
Hey, it proved to be true, though.
Yeah.
Who's the leading tackler in franchise history?
Yeah,
Who's
but
in
look,
the Ring of Honor?
My boys. They were my boys. Still are my boys. But I just felt like, at that time, man, he put me on the spot. And, that's Jimmy, though. He had me working.
Rest of the year, right?
Rest of the year, brother. I worked.
You cover way more than just this team, and people like to hear your take on the rest of the division. This could be an interesting division because the Giants are the only one who kind of had the Cowboys number. Mm-hmm. Wentz could be improved for the Eagles, and even Washington has some talent. Obviously, Cousins can put up big numbers. Who do you think of those three teams will be the biggest challenge to the defending division-winning Dallas Cowboys?
I think it's obvious. I think it's the New York Giants. I mean, I think Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles will play much better this year. I think they'll be a better football team. I don't think they'll match up with the Cowboys because of the Cowboys style and, the weapons that they present. I really don't think the Redskins are a team right now that can compete at this level with the Cowboys or the Giants. I think the Giants are a team that give the Cowboys matchup problems because they can cover across the board. They have three strong corners that match up with Cole Beasley in the slot, with Dez on the outside, with Terrence Williams. They can play on one-on-one matchup and rush the passer, and that's a huge concern for the Cowboys when teams can basically drop a man, Collins in the box, another safety in the box to stop the run. So they just don't. I don't think the Cowboys match up well with the Giants. And then the Giants got better as far as wide receiving core. Brandon Marshall can stay healthy.
And they got a draft at a tight end in the first round.
They got weapons as well. It's it's going to be up to Eli Manning to get the ball out of his hands, and can they protect Eli? That's their biggest question mark.
This reminds me of the thing I miss the most about being at ESPN. It's being in the green room between shows and talking football with my colleagues like Darren Woodson and Jeff Saturday and Joel Bettis and the Hasselbeck brothers. I mean, that's what it's really all about.
Yeah.
Being in the green room.
Being in the green room.
In the green room.
Hey, how many times am I
It should be a show. The green room should be the show.
That should be the show. But how many times, reverse that, you ask us questions and we're asking you, how many times have I called you Ed and say, hey, Ed, tell me about the CBA and why this is happening? And he's breaking it down to me. Okay, I'm in Colorado right now. I'm golfing, but, let me tell you.
Hey, but I'm always here for you, Darren.
Yeah,
I'm not getting paid. I'm not working anymore, but I'll work for you anytime, buddy.
Yeah. Just don't ever ask John Clayton, for salary cap information. That's trying him. Some of the worst times of my life were him trying to explain some of those things to me, and my eyes just glazing over. This is why I keep getting laid off by ESPN over and over. And that was Darren Woodson, very candid Darren Woodson. And, one of the things, Ed, as we react to some of this, and we're about to get you caught up on some news happening out here in Oxnard, but the fact that, I think Darren Woodson, and you'll also hear tomorrow from another player, that current player, who doesn't think there should be this excuse that, this guy's young, but I do love that Woody said something along the lines of, if the social media were like it is today when they played, that half of the team would have been suspended.
I'm sure his former teammates are going to appreciate that remark. And that's probably an exaggeration. We all know it's an exaggeration. But the point is what he was making it. And I think he did have some fair advice and even criticism for Ezekiel Elliott and some of the other players who, may start the season suspended, which has been a consistent pattern of problem for the Cowboys in recent years. I thought he was also incredibly revealing about his feelings that this franchise will, no matter how many Super Bowls the Cowboys win, in the opinion of a guy like Darren Woodson, and I assume many others on those teams in the early 90s, the Cowboys are never going to win as many Super Bowls as they should have. Because they didn't, he said they would have won the third year, which was the year they lost the NFC Championship game with Switzer as a head coach. And they did, of course, come back the following year and win it all again. But he's clearly not over that yet either. And maybe he never will be.
No, I think you're right on that. Okay, a couple of notes we want to get to. And Ed has done some amazing work already out here. Broke a story last night on the Tyrone Crawford injury that it was a lateral sprain. Boy, Cowboys really dodged one there because as he was carted off, it just seemed like his reaction was one to an injury that could really keep him out for an extended amount of time. It looks like he will be ready for the regular season, and this is a team that the suspensions can't afford to lose any more players along that defensive line. And Ed, I think yesterday, Jason Garrett admitted today that the rest of that practice, the mood changed, the level of energy was down. It was a little bit quiet after watching a teammate. They had a prayer together afterwards.
All this for a sprained ankle.
I think that's right. That's right. You can pray over sprained ankles. They didn't know that at the time. A little bit of a...
They're ready to call in Dion and have Dion put his healing hands on him, as he used to say, but I think Dion was having a birthday celebration or something. It wasn't available, so
that's right.
They did a group prayer.
They did the group prayer, and it's not to get sacrilegious, Ed. I think the prayer seemed to work, and obviously...
Their prayers have been answered.
Their prayers have been answered, and so... Ed, from what you were able to tell with the information you gleaned and then reported out there via the Doomsday Podcast and also on Twitter, does this seem like something that you think he'll be back in there? Probably may not see him in the preseason anymore, but by the start of the regular season.
And he's a veteran guy, so you assume that he came into camp in relatively good shape and certainly understands the scheme. He's a guy who's played a couple of different positions. They've been using him primarily at defensive end rather than tackle. They paid him a lot of money because they envisioned him being the 3-technique defensive tackle. This defense that Rod Marinelli runs is all about the 3-technique defensive tackle, and then it's about the middle linebacker, the will linebacker, and that's supposed to be Tyrone Crawford and Sean Lee, and then in the secondary it's supposed to be Barry Church, and it's never quite worked out. Those guys have never proven to be what the Tampa Bay Bucks had when they went and won the Super Bowl. But yeah, he's an important guy. You do think that he'll be able to, even if he misses most or all of the preseason, that he'll be ready to go and relatively healthy, you would assume, for week 1 against Giants.
Okay, before we have a little bit of an offensive line discussion, I know you've got some notes over there. I'm kind of excited to dig into that. One real quick thing I heard today that surprised me. I was watching that Hall of Fame game the other night. Ed, you were there in attendance at the game. And those first 2 drives, boom, boom, they run down the field. And, I mean, just as Cardinals are scoring like crazy. And I noticed Darren Woodson on the field, the linebacker, who had the parking spot, the parking rage, whatever you want to call that, and brandished a gun, and we'll see what his suspension could end up being. Allegedly brandished a gun.
A long gun.
And anyway, I started making my Darren Woodson jokes during the game the other night. I found out today, after kind of digging in on what's been going on at camp, this guy has been flashing. Like, this guy has had just about as good a camp for the under-the-radar type players as anybody out here. I found that interesting. Now, from a offensive line standpoint, Ed, something has happened since we've been out here. There is some rotating going on right now with the first-team reps at left guard. Now, before I say that, I should say that Tyron Smith will miss practice again today with some back stiffness. He had some back issues last year. They say it's not related to whatever he had going on last year.
He had a bulging disc, I think, at one point.
The bulging disc. But this is a little worrisome for the Cowboys right now. So Tyron Smith will be out right now indefinitely. They list sort of everybody as day-to-day, but he will not practice today, and they don't know exactly when he'll be back. I would highly doubt he would play in Saturday's preseason game. But, Ed, walk us through a little bit of what we've seen over at left guard, because now it appears there's a bit of a competition, a kind of a camp battle, we like to call it.
Well, as you talk to players out here, and I think it's readily apparent that their offensive identity, and really the identity of this football team, is formed, first on the offensive line with a prodigious running game and a back who led the league in rushing as a rookie in Ezekiel Elliott. But I think people forget that they've got 2 open spots on this offensive line, which most people just generally regard as the best in football. Well, is it still? If it ever was, is it still? Doug Free, probably an underappreciated guy. Was he the most athletic right tackle in football? Probably not. He's not as athletic as the guy that they hope wins that spot, Lael Collins, who's moving from left guard and creating an opening at that position. But, they did have a great appreciation for the fact that Free was a guy who, while not tremendously athletic, did not blow assignments. He knew what he was supposed to do, and rarely did he make a mistake. There is not that sort of mental consistency with Lael Collins to this point. So that's their big trepidation as it pertains to him moving from guard to right tackle, where he's obviously a premier athlete, and they just signed him, so obviously they had a lot of faith in him as a starter going forward. And that does leave the left guard position open, and I think what they hope would happen as an organization, they come in here, they let guys work out, they compete for jobs, but the organization has an idea of the way they would like for it to work out, and they'd like for Jonathan Cooper, who's a former, top 10 draft pick in the NFL, who bounced around with the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Browns. So he was spent part of last year with the best team in football and the worst team in football, and got cut by both. But they think he can be a good, especially in the run game, a good, tough left guard, replace Ron Leary, who was really underestimated in terms of his value to that group last year.
I find it fascinating. Those are all that's some really good insight that you've brought. It is rare when you have 3 All-Pros and you have this what's regarded as one of the better offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the NFL, but you have these 2 potential weak spots. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen out there at right tackle. You think Lael Collins, like you said, is athletic enough to move out there and be okay. Left guard, I mean, it's a huge, with the running game and how much they lean on that to have sort of some indecision there right now. I don't sense that this is like we're so good. These guys are both so good. Let's let them battle it out. I think they would probably hoped that the man you mentioned before, Jonathan Cooper, would come in here and kind of take hold of the position. But the old vet himself, who's gotten himself back in shape, I don't know how much of a vet he is. He's been around a little bit.
With
Byron
Bell.
Byron Bell's kind of in the mix here.
Well, Jason Garrett said that he's really made a significant attempt and succeeded in terms of getting himself into the kind of physique that they want to have on the offensive line. He's had to lose a considerable amount of weight to fit into what the Cowboys want, because they need guys who can get outside and block on the perimeter, and those are not the kinds of offenses that Byron Bell has typically played in.
Ed, this has been another big day for us. I want to say another future Hall of Famer is going to join us on tomorrow's program, and a very reflective player at that. Let's just say, without saying the name, Tony Romo's best friend is going to join us in tomorrow's program. So
that could have been you at one point, a description of you.
I might have been that at one point, but
that was before he was Tony Romo, and you weren't even what you are now.
I don't know what I am now, but it's long gone. Hey, Ed and I have to go out to the pool. We're going to go try to get some sun, go lay out. Thanks for everything, everyone who's been a part of this. Of course, Frito Nation Productions doing a wonderful job back there in Dallas. And goodbye and good night from Oxnard.
Till tomorrow.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.